Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog, the Week 8 update. We got the rankings, the full injury report, Underdog picks, and the DraftKings ownership and pivot plays to look forward to. As always, hit the time codes to jump around if you want to, or if you just want the full cheat sheet, hit the description or the comment section. Everything is currently updated inside the Mayo Media newsletter. The next newsletter drop is coming Saturday evening once we get the full Saturday practice reports, update the projections, update the ownership, and all that information will be in there. And you can sub to that for free right now, Mayo Media on Substack, all right? Smash the like and sub to Mayo Media Network when you're here. If you sub to Mayo Media Network right now, or you're previously subbed to Mayo Media Network on YouTube, you get into a draw for $500, and we're giving away that winner on Tuesday evening. So let's get to it, all right? The running back injuries and rankings update. Travis Etienne is a game time decision for the Packers and Jacksonville game. Tank Bigsby currently ranks number 23 in the running back rankings, and that is assuming that Travis Etienne is going to be out. That's a few factors. Now, if you think that Jacksonville is going to win or be ultra competitive in this game, you may want to move Tank up in your personal rankings, but where the Packers may jump out to a lead in this one, you might see a lot more D'Ernest Johnson than you might expect. If Etienne ends up going, I would not play Etienne, but I would bump down Tank Bigsby outside the top 30. It'd just be too hard to trust not knowing who's going to get the goal line touches, who's going to work in the passing game, and how much of an effect Etienne being back, albeit injured, would impact the amount of carries that Bigsby gets on the ground. Don't forget, Jacksonville ran on the ground like 20 times in a row against the Patriots. Probably not going to happen against the Packers. So just be wary of that, Bigsby coming off the big game. In fact, weirdly enough, no one wants Etienne anymore in fantasy. See if you can get him for peanuts right now. Not saying he's going to be good the rest of the season, but it's a great opportunity to actually buy low on someone because legit no one wants him. So you can get him for like, your fourth receiver, fifth receiver. If anything happens to Bigsby, you have Etienne, and that's going to be great. He's going to be the starter again and be like a top 15 guy. Or he just goes back to being what he was earlier on in the season. He ends up being the lead in this backfield. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's certainly on the bell curve. It's not a 0% chance. It's like a 30, 40% chance of happening. And that's how you actually buy low on someone, if you were wondering, in fantasy. It's not like, oh yeah, got to buy low now because this guy's coming back. We got to sell high. Like, it's very obvious who the usual buy low and sell high guys are. Etienne's not on that radar right now. So go get him for nothing if you can. If it costs you something, don't do it. If it costs you nothing, that's when you want to do it. Nick Chubb is number 24 in the running back rankings, and that is mainly because Jerome Ford is out. He's easing his way back in. The problem would happen, like we saw a week ago, is if Cleveland falls way behind against the Ravens, you're not going to see a ton of Chubb on the field. He'll probably play behind Pierre Strong, who will work as the primary pass catcher and on third down. If you think this game tightens up a little bit, and we've seen the Ravens play down to competition in the past, especially when they play like lower end teams within their own division, and Chubb historically has been very good against the Ravens. Teller is back on the offensive line. Obviously, Jameis is starting, so maybe it's the new Browns are coming back. He's actually a part of three players that I like as the first Underdog entry, not the official Underdog entry, but I cooked this one up on Friday, so I wanted to get it to you guys. Code Mayo at Underdog right now. The newsletter drop picks for Underdog won 3 of the past 4. That includes a 3-1, a 3-1, and a 20-1 from last weekend. Then a loser on Monday Night Football. But that's a ratio that I am willing to take. So if you use Code Mayo right now, you can get Nick Chubb higher rushing yards of 49.5, Jonathan Taylor higher rushing yards of 60.5, and Tyreek Hill higher than 80 receiving yards. And we'll get to Tyreek here in a minute. That pays 6-1, and if you use Code Mayo to sign up right now at Underdog, you will get a Dak Prescott free pick for Sunday Night Football. That's the one. Sunday Night Football, and you can boost that 6-1 up to a 10-1 if you want to. So go use Code Mayo right now. But I like Nick Chubb this week. Obviously, the upside is somewhat capped because of his limitations, the score limitations, but could be the week we finally see the real Nick Chubb. I'm anticipating a few weeks from now once he's back up to full game speed, but that's where I'm at. Jonathan Taylor, as I just mentioned, I want to go the higher on his rushing yards. He is off the injury report. He is going to play against the Texans for the Colts. He's at running back number 7 for the week. Bucky Irving was doubtful to play on Thursday. Then he practiced on Friday, and Todd Bowles was like, yeah, wasn't actually that big of a deal anyway. So Bucky's going to play. He's back in the rankings. I have him the highest of the Tampa running backs at running back number 26 as slight dogs at home to the Atlanta Falcons. Rachaad White, 2 spots behind him at running back number 28. He played 11 of 11 third downs a week ago. It wasn't even a week ago. It was on Monday night against the Ravens when they were a big-time underdogs in that game. If you think this game is closer, which the spread would indicate, maybe you don't think that way, but if the spread plays itself out, you'll see more Irving in this spot. You have to trust that his toe is going to be okay. Sean Tucker's at number 39 in the rankings because we did see a 3-back rotation in the Tampa backfield. Tajah Spears is now trending towards playing. Not official, but trending that way against the Lions as 12-point underdogs right now. Initially, Tony Pollard was going to be pretty high up in the rankings because he was basically the only guy in the Titans backfield. So we still don't know who's playing quarterback for the Titans, by the way. It could still be Will Levis. It's probably not going to be Will Levis, but it might be Will Levis at the last second. So I bumped Pollard down. His lower on rushing attempts as well on underdog is pretty juicy right now at 15.5 if Spears ends up playing. If Spears doesn't play, then it's not a great play, but you might want to get ahead of it. Invest a little bit of cash on that one. But Pollard I have at number 27 in the running back rankings. Spears at 44. If Spears is playing and he's actually okay and the script plays itself out, they get way behind to the Lions early, then there's going to be a lot of Spears in this game and not so much Pollard, and especially not a lot of running against the Lions in that spot when you're down by 2 or more scores. Other than that, at running back, Christian McCaffrey is targeting week 10 as a return. San Francisco on its bye week a week from now. So week 10 coming out of the bye, you might see Christian McCaffrey again. So sell high on Jordan Mason. Yeah, no shit. I think we all knew that, right? Yeah, if he's not going to be the starter, maybe you can see if you can get running back 1 value for him. Not going to happen. There's another guy, though, that if you can get like something... Listen, we don't know that McCaffrey's going to be fine the moment that he comes back. He can get re-injured like that. And then all of a sudden, Jordan Mason's a top 5 running back for the rest of the season again. So you have to pick your spots and be willing to lose a trade and have it not work out for you if you want to have maximum upside. See what people are saying about Mason. It doesn't mean you have to trade for him, but contact the Mason owner in your league and just be like, hey, what do you want from Mason right now? You know, they're going on by and Christian McCaffrey's coming back. Maybe that guy's in a spot right now. Get boom. Here, have like a Tutu Atwell for him. No problem. That's probably a bit too low. But you understand the context of what I'm saying, of the proper guys to go target for maximum upside. But again, you need to be willing to lose these trades and look kind of stupid if you actually want to win them bigly. All right? Keaton Mitchell opened the practice window for the Ravens, but he is out this week. Jonathan Brooks, same thing, but he is expected either back next week or the week after. We'll see on him with Bryce Young starting at quarterback for the foreseeable future. Not great for anyone on Carolina, to be perfectly honest with you, and Gus Edwards is still on injured reserve. The most unknown stories we have right now are at wide receiver. Tyreek Hill popped up on the injury report with a foot injury. I still think that he's going to play. I still think that he's going to be great. He is number 2 in my wide receiver ranking. Just keep an eye on it in case he doesn't play all of a sudden. He and Waddle, both top 20 options. Tua is quarterback number 14 coming off his IR stint. Zay Flowers is questionable with an ankle injury. He got in a limited practice. He might be limited in snaps. He might not be completely effective. I still have him inside the top 40. I still have him ahead of Rashad Bateman, but I've bumped Zay Flowers down from where he's normally at of that like high teens, low 20s into the low 30s, and Rashad Bateman up from the low 50s to wide receiver number 38 for the week. So both very viable plays against the Browns, but risky at the same time. Absolutely no floor on either of them. T. Higgins popped up the quad injury on Friday, and we have already seen him miss 2 games so far this season. It's not that I'm worried about it. It's just, you know, last second we've seen crazier things happen with T. Higgins. So if you're relying on T. Higgins this week, just watch out for those inactives that come out at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Usually Schefter and Rappaport have very good overnight info about the direction that these players are going. Obviously not official by any means, but T. Higgins will probably be like, yeah, he's a bit banged up, but he's probably going to play. That's what I expect with all 3 of those guys this week. But I wanted to put those 3 in particular on your radars because those are guys that you would actively want to play in your lineups, all things being equal, right? So now we know. The bigger ones this week, DeAndre Hopkins was traded to Kansas City. He's expected to play. Juju Smith-Schuster is out, and Sky Moore was actually placed on injured reserve with a core injury. So I think there's only 2 receivers on Kansas City. Really, there's one worth playing. Worthy is at wide receiver number 30 against the Raiders, and I put DeAndre Hopkins in at number 43. Expect an Amari Cooper type situation that we saw last week with the Bills for Hopkins this week. Like, he should be playing the Rashee Rice role in this offense. Problem is, he's an old man, and he's not as good as Rashee Rice at this point. Or he was sandbagging in Tennessee, and now he's reinvigorated with passion to play football again on an undefeated team. I do think they'll have specific plays where they're looking for Hopkins to try to force him the ball. Same thing happened last week with Devontae Adams. Same thing happened last week with Amari Cooper, and especially inside the red zone. I mean, that's where the real worth, where Hopkins is going to come from this year, being on the Chiefs, is that you can just throw it to him and he will go grab the ball. His hands are still amazing. He just doesn't quite have the separation that he used to, or the athleticism that he used to. But in confined spaces, that's where his value is going to come in. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him catch a touchdown this week. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to be like 7 for 114 and a touchdown. It's more likely to be 3 for 43 and a touchdown, which, wide receiver 43, that would work out fine for me this time around if you were in a pinch. DK Metcalf is expected to be out against the Bills, so I have Lockett and JSN as wide receiver 2s, number 24 and number 25 in the rankings. Bobo at number 56, and Noah Fant moves up to tight end number 12 this week against the Seattle, or again, not against Seattle, they're playing themselves. That defense is really bad. They would be way higher in the rankings. The Bills defense, a little bit better, only a 3-point spread. Gino's been much worse outdoors versus indoors, so all those factors, putting them into context. Love Ken Walker. The rest of them, good plays, not great plays. On the other side of the ball, Curtis Samuel is going to be out for the Buffalo Bills. No big loss. His 2 targets a game might go somewhere else. Jamison Williams is suspended because of PEDs, so he's out 2 weeks. So obviously, Amon-Ra, I can't in good conscience play Laporte. Laporte is going to make us all look stupid when we finally bench him. He's going to have 8 catches for 200 yards and 5 touchdowns, but he just doesn't do anything anymore. He's blocking a ton. He's a pretty good blocker. So that's helping out Gibbs and Montgomery in the backfield. Initially, I would have thought that Tim Patrick would have been the biggest beneficiary here. Dan Campbell says it's going to be Allen Robinson for reasons unknown. Maybe he's trying to boost up the prospects of his 2014 fantasy team. I don't know. And then you still have Khalif Raymond walking around the speedster, and they'll hit him with crossing routes. But it's really just Amon-Ra, the running backs, Laporta if you need them. And then if you have to take a flyer, I'd still take it on Tim Patrick this time around. Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson are both out for the Carolina Panthers, with Bryce Young starting against Denver. Patrick Surtain should be back on the other side of the ball for Denver. But who does he even cover? No one. No one's good. It's like Leggett, Coker, I think Mingo is still around. Tommy Tremble's questionable to play. So Jatavion Sanders is going to be out there. It's going to be brutal. I'm going to have egg on my face. I made Denver my super lock this week at -7.5. Minus 8.5. And I think it's 11.5 now. And I bet by Sunday it gets up even higher at this point. I just don't see how Carolina moves the ball. So I've tanked everyone in the rankings. There is no Carolina Panther I would start in fantasy this week if I was thinking about fielding a competitive team. That even goes for Chuba Hubbard, who has been great in the backfield. Maybe he's the one guy who can get it going, but he didn't do crap with Bryce Young under center earlier on in the season. The moment Dalton stepped in, all of a sudden Thielen, Deontay Johnson, and Chuba Hubbard had value. With Bryce Young, I just don't see it. Jalen Polk is out against the Jets for the Patriots. Demario Douglas is going to play. I have Douglas at number 40 in the wide receiver rankings, and Hunter Henry at tight end at number 11. Alan Lazard is out or probably going to be out on the other side of the ball with the chest injury. He's doubtful to play right now. So I bumped up Garrett Wilson, bumped up Devontae Adams. Both are top 15 options, and I bumped up Aaron Rodgers. I can see this being a game where he kind of goes nuts. Everyone is playing Breece Hall. Justifiably. He's a great play this week. He's inside the top 5 running backs. On DraftKings, he might be the highest owned player, or at least highest owned running back as of this point. We'll find that out a little bit later on in the show. Always hit the time codes. All right? But Rodgers might just throw it when they get in close. He's actually pretty good at that still. So picking up on the receivers might be a nice situation, knowing that the tree is condensed a little bit, especially with the red zone presence of Lazard being out, who's always a favorite, probably a good omen for Devontae Adams in this spot in week 2 after his impassioned speech, their loss last week on Sunday Night Football. Juwan Jennings is expected out with a hip problem. Obviously, Ayuk is out. McCaffrey is out for the 49ers. Now Debo looks like he's going to play with pneumonia. I don't know how effective he's going to be, but the fact that they're not keeping him out with a bye week coming up to get him extra healthy, screw it, I'm playing him. I didn't play Puka on Thursday. That was dumb. Even in limited snaps, he smashed. He didn't get the touchdown, but it was a fantastic game from him. I'm not leaving Debo out against a bad Dallas defense that's still missing most of its guys on the defensive end of the ball. So Debo, number 11 in the wide receiver rankings. Ricky Bullets at number 45 in the wide receiver rankings. And Ronnie Bell, number 74, if you need someone. Kittle is a little bit down. He's dealing with a foot injury as well. More on him in a second. But where they play on Sunday Night Football, if we don't know, I had him at tight end number 2 for the week. I dropped him to tight end number 6 because of the uncertainty of the off chance that he doesn't play. And then you're kind of screwed with options if he doesn't go. So I've moved some safer options who are going to play ahead of him. All things being equal, we hear Kittle is most definitely going to play. He moves back up to number 2 in the tight end rankings. Quentin Johnston is expected out for the Chargers. Ladd McConkey is expected in. Not sure about DJ Chark or Will Disley or Hayden Hurst at this point. So it'd be Simi again if you want to run him in there. Stone for tight ends. If both the tight ends play, they're both useless. If Hurst misses, Disley's an okay play, but I wouldn't expect them to be trailing as almost 2 as a touch. Well, what are they favored by now? 9-point favorites against the Saints? It's just, you probably won't need to see Justin Herbert pass as much as we saw Monday night against Arizona. He'll be back to the ground in that circumstance. So I don't really love anyone in the Chargers receiving game. Ladd is the highest, but I only have him at number 49. I just don't see a ton of upside there. Chris Olave is going to be back after his concussion against the Chargers on the other side of the ball. Spencer Rattler starting at quarterback once again. Jordan Whittington missed week number 8. And obviously Mike Evans is out until at least week 11 for the Buccaneers. Tambo and I talked about the breakdown of the Tampa Bay receivers, especially as it pertains to DFS, but for your fantasy lineups, I would consider Trey Palmer the best of the options. Weirdly, he's the cheapest of anyone. He stepped in the Evans role. If you could figure out if Shepard or McMillan is just going to be the Chris Godwin, although it's hard to be the Chris Godwin when you're not as good as Chris Godwin, but playing the slot is what I'm talking about. If it's McMillan, I like him more, but we just don't know that going in. So for me this week, just inside the top 40 at number 37 in the wide receiver rankings. Trey Palmer, McMillan is at 44, and Sterling Shepard is at number 50. I think all are worth a gamble in a potential catch-up spot against a not-so-great Falcons defense, but you could just pick wrong and end up with 0 points as well. Kate Otton's the guy that you want to play, right? At receiver, that's where you want to go. At tight end, Dallas Goedert is out. Calcaterra will start once again in what projects to be more of a back-and-forth type shootout against the Bengals this week. Calcaterra comes in way down. Didn't really work out last week. Still number 19 in the tight end rankings. Worth a stream if you are in a pinch, but there are just better options right now. Like, people don't own Hunter Henry enough or Noah Fant enough. Those guys are better options this time around. Will Disley and Hayden Hurst, already referred to them. Not sure whether or not they're going to play. Again, if they both play, you don't want to play them. You probably don't want to play any of them anyway, unless it's really, again, a Will Disley game, but that happens like once every 3 years, and we just saw it happen on Monday night, so it's unlikely that it would happen again. George Kittle with that foot injury is questionable. As mentioned, he's now tight end 6. That's behind McBride, Ferguson, Kelsey, Njoku, and Bowers in the rankings. That's the inverse order of those tight end rankings. Bowers actually number 1, with Njoku second. If you are wondering, TJ Hawkinson did not play in week number 8. He will play in week number 9, according to KOC. Taysom Hill is going to be in for the New Orleans Saints. He was taken off the injury report. He's tight end number 16 against the Chargers in this catch-up spot. Finally, the quarterbacks. Jayden Daniels, a legit game-time decision. I don't think he's going to play. I have the rankings as if he is not going to play, and Marcus Mariota is going to be starting for the Washington Commanders, but I'd like to see it if Daniels gets in. If Daniels is in, I'd play him. I don't know. I'd probably play McLaurin at the same time. Maybe not. Probably just, of anyone in the receiving game, I guess Ertz is another one you can throw on the back end of those tight end rankings. Like, you're going to play McLaurin, but you're going to play McLaurin either way because he's probably one of your best receivers. Other than that, I'd play Daniels. He'd be, let me just take a look here at the quarterback rankings. Would I play Geno Smith? Would I play Caleb Williams or would I play Jayden Daniels? I'd probably play Caleb Williams this week. And I have Caleb Williams at quarterback number 10. I would insert Jayden Daniels at quarterback number 11. So still a quarterback 1, and you have to kind of middle between the substantial upside that he brings. Maybe he runs less with this ribs problem because he doesn't want to take a hit, and the absolute floor that he takes one hit and he's no longer in the game. And you're like, oh yeah, that was great again. 3 points for 2 consecutive weeks at my quarterback position, which means 2 losses in your league if your quarterback is scoring 3 points a game. I have Mariota at number 23 in the rankings. He's not a bad like upside type play because you know he's going to run, and that's good for a floor if nothing else. Andy Dalton is out. Bryce Young is starting. That's bad news, as mentioned, for everyone on Carolina. Aaron Rodgers and his hamstring injury is expected to play against the Patriots. Of course, he's playing. Tua is back in for the Dolphins. Hopefully, we see that Dolphins team that we were expecting, when you drafted all their fantasy guys, that team. So get them all in. It might be the only way. If he takes one more hit, he might be done again for the season. So use him while you can with Tua. Levis is questionable, the shoulder injury. I still have Mason Rudolph in as the projected starter right now, but keep an eye on that. Derek Carr is out, AOC is out, and Tyler Huntley has been placed on injured reserve for the Dolphins. So they're getting rid of all the backups for Tua. They might just run Wildcat if he ends up getting hurt again. Finally, Brandon Aubrey and his jury duty situation has been resolved. He is going to play on Sunday Night Football for the Dallas Cowboys, so you can put your fantasy MVP back in the lineup. For almost about 2 decades, the irons were really the only good part of my golf game, unless you include 300-yard drives, which meant hitting it about 150 yards straight and 150 yards with slice into the woods to the right. So I finally went and got lessons, straightened out my swing, and all of a sudden I could drive the ball pretty decently, pretty straight. And then my irons just kind of went wayward with the new compression that I was getting onto the ball. So it was time for me to make a change with my irons. So when I heard about the new PXG Black Ops irons and how they can dramatically improve my game, I had to give them a try. Booked a fitting with the PXG location, brought in my current irons, and took the PXG challenge. The staff was amazing. We worked on my ball flight through TrackMan in order to find the perfect irons and the perfect length and the perfect loft for what my game demands these days. And the new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit, they maximize performance, and they're fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That is a great price for a great golf iron. So take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $250 MasterCards reward card. Hurry, this offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening? A new language? Or, for me personally, how to finally beat your best friend in golf? Not Cuss, but, my other friends. I want to beat them at golf. I can beat Cuss, no problem. Therapy can help reconnect you with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come, honestly, at any age. It's helpful learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries, and it empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major traumas. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All the best things that you need. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/PatMayo today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/PatMayo. Underdog picks for week number 8, coming off a bony 20-1 last weekend. Let's see if we can run it back with another 20-1 this weekend. It's probably unlikely that it hits again, but hey, you can turn it into a flex play and win 10-1 if you go 5 out of 5, but still go 2.5-1 if you go 4 out of 5 on it as well. These are the things that you can do at Underdog. Use code Mayo right now. Get yourself that Dak Prescott free pick for Sunday Night Football, so you can always just add that on to anything else to double the odds of any entry that you put in on Underdog this week, and you get the deposit bonus of up to $1,000 as well. And there's a bunch of profit tokens that you can get yourself for a boost of 20%, 50%, 30%, and just start juicing all this up, all right? So let's go on this one. Marvin Harrison is up first lower than 8.5 targets against the Dolphins. And then James Conner, higher than 10.5 receiving yards, being his teammate in that same game. He's gone over that number 3 games in a row. Cole Kmet, higher than 7.5 fantasy points. So he catches a touchdown, we're good to go, which he has become one of the primary options for Caleb Williams in the backfield. But we do, in the red zone, but we do know that Washington can still generate pressure. That's still going to happen. It's going to force Caleb Williams to get the ball out quickly. Kmet has been a great beneficiary of that. Even now that Keenan Allen is back as well, it's just more roaming free for Cole Kmet. So higher than 7.5 fantasy points. Tony Pollard, as mentioned before, 14.5 rushing attempts, lower on that as A, they're going to be huge underdogs, and maybe they don't run the ball a ton anyway. B, Spears might be back to take away some of his playing time to get him off the field, so I like that one. Then Jonathan Taylor, higher than 11.7 fantasy points in this game. As I mentioned, I have him ranked at running back number 7 this week, and I like that a lot. There's a few other ones I want to do on Sunday night, but I'll probably give those out on Sunday Night Football this week. Garrion returns to the show to talk, I'm guessing, Tua, as you can see. Look at him. Looks great as Mary. Cussed is Woogie, looking pretty good too. So we'll be live at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time Sunday night to wrap up the week, talk about everything, give out some more underdog plays. But the big one that I'm looking at, one of my highest rated underdog plays of the week so far, is CeeDee Lamb, lower than 11.5 targets. He's gone over that number once all season long. The problem is trying to find someone on San Francisco to put it with when you don't know who's playing. If you just want to take someone out of one of these and put CeeDee Lamb lower than 11.5 targets in, I could most definitely see that working. So we could even do something like Lamb lower than 11.5, Connor higher than 10.5, Marvin Harrison lower than 8.5 targets, and then just throw in two different ones and mix it up a little bit. I like Mixon higher than 78.5 rushing yards, and Cedric Tillman higher than 38.5 receiving yards. That also pays 20 to 1 if you want to get on that. That's not going to be the official newsletter play. There's only going to be one of those, and I think it's going to be the first one that I gave out as a part of this segment. But you can find all this information both in the show, runthesims.com. You can use their simulator as well, but the newsletter is free to join. If more open up on Saturday, which tends to happen, they expand because this target market has been the best market so far. As you've seen with all the winning entries that we've had, especially the bigger ones, there's just a lot of lower on targets in those games. And that's really where you want to be investing your money. That is, listen, Tyreek Hill could fall down and trip over the 20-yard line and not hit his receiving total higher, right? Of course. But we can generally predict with good accuracy, obviously it's not foolproof, the amount of targets and game flow as long as the script stays somewhat on track. Like if the Titans start blowing out the Lions this week as gigantic underdogs, well, then all of a sudden Pollard's going to hit his total of rushing hires, right? Well, if they get behind by 20 points, they're just not going to run the ball. So there's no chance of that happening unless they're just completely demented, and that's how they want to run their offense. But I think the Callahan's a little bit smarter than that. So the rushing attempts and target market, if you have a good sense of the game, you can find a lot within those. And generally speaking, people love going higher on targets because they have this in their mind. But when you go look at what the target projections are set at versus how they actually do in games, it's almost always lower, like 80% of the time. It's actually kind of crazy. So I find that to be the softest of all the underdog markets if you want to check that out. And again, they expand more on Saturday evening and even into Sunday morning if you want to go check it out yourself. So you can get the Dak free pick with code Mayo at Underdog right now, and then keep an eye out on the rest of those or tail along. I'll have the links in the newsletter on Saturday evening if you want to play along with the main one, which will be 20 to 1 this week, and fingers crossed, we hit it again. All right? Finally, a quick look and an updated look at DraftKings main slate on Sunday for week number 8. The Run the Sims cheat sheet will be available in the free newsletter on Saturday evening, along with the rankings update and everything else. People find that, infographic very helpful. It's not done until Saturday evening, so it won't be in the show. It'll be included in the newsletter. So go sub to it. It's free to join, and it gets updated throughout the up until Sunday if guys are out with the injury report and the rankings. So please go do that. Mayo Media on Substack, or just hit the description where you can find all of this information. All right, sub to the channel and get yourself in that $500 draw as well. Breece Hall at 32%. 1/3 of teams are going to have Breece Hall in large field tournaments. It looks like, at least. After that, it's going to be Javonte Williams, Joe Mixon, and then to a lesser extent, Devin Achane and J.K. Dobbins. Those are projecting as the top 5. When Tambo and I discussed breakdowns, it was looking like Bucky Irving was going to be out, so we expected Rachaad White to take a big leap up, Mao style, a great leap forward in the ownership projections, but, with Bucky Irving being in, that's probably not going to happen as much. Some other guys drawing a bit of ownership, Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Swift, Derrick Henry, obviously. Jahmyr Gibbs is a lot lower than I thought he'd be. James Conner, a lot lower than I thought he'd be. Chase Brown is looking like one of the better lower-end plays. There's not a lot of good, cheap running backs this week. Chase Brown is only $5,800. He needs to score a touchdown. They need to continue to utilize him the way that they have been, and maybe even more in the receiving game against Philadelphia. But it's a viable spot with a lot of people going to Javonte for $200 more, which I understand. But it's not like Bo Nix doesn't run it in himself. It's not like they don't use Jaleel McLaughlin. If they get up so much, they have that other guy, Estime, that they might end up using. So it's difficult to think about that in that context, right? Where if you have a guy that's at least in a split, his quarterback outside of his 80-yard run against the Giants doesn't really run the ball in for touchdowns all that much unless someone is just giving it away to him, that Chase Brown's been holding down that fort and he's cheaper and fewer people are playing him. That's usually a spot where I like to target. And if you do want to pay up for receivers this week, which is an interesting method because there's 7 guys below $4,000 that you could theoretically play, and people are playing to save money to go pay up everywhere else. Chase Brown's a nice middle spot. The other one that I'm jamming into lineups, Saquon's going to be super low at 4%. Kenneth Walker's only going to be 6%. Again, Kenneth Walker's been so good. Jonathan Taylor is 2% against the Texans. He was great last time against the Texans. And he's cheaper than Joe Mixon. And I get that he's coming back off injury. They're underdogs. I understand all that. But we're trying to look for a little bit of leverage on the field. I think that's where it really comes in this week. Jonathan Taylor's a lot set up like Jahmyr Gibbs was a week ago, where he just kind of falls in between all of the popular running backs. And if you had just played Gibbs last week at 3% over everyone else, you just absolutely smashed in your lineups. And even going back down to look more points per dollar wise, if you really need a cheap running back, it's just not looking good at this point. Let's see, who's the cheapest of everyone who's good? Chase Brown. And that's basically it. Rachaad White at 57 and a 3-way split at running back. That's bad news. At tight end, because a lot of the receivers are going to go with the stacks that they're in anyway. Cade Otton has been boosted up to around 20% ownership. That's double the next closest tight end. Makes perfect sense. He's $3,500. I don't mind playing Cade Otton at 20%. I'll figure out a way to get different elsewhere. Tambo and I constructed lineups with him and without him in it just to see how you can get different if you want to. Njoku, right around 10%. Pretty good play. Evan Ingram, Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce. All the regulars are going to be up there. Will Disley right now is holding a lot of ownership, but again, I don't like playing Will Disley here, even at $3,000, unless it's just him. And again, even if it is just him, it's not going to be great. Lucas Kroll is $2,700. You want to stack up Bo Nix, the cheapest stack possible. I don't mind that because I like Kroll, but that's really just me, that seems to be. No one else seems to like Lucas Kroll. If you're just going to go down and try to find some points per dollar type plays, Noah Fant is looking pretty good at $3,700. And then you have Hunter Henry, who's $3,800. It rates out as the 5th best tight end in terms of points per dollar on the slate. Just no one is using him. Everyone is using Cade Otton for $400 less. If you can find the money and you do want to get away from Otton a little bit, that is the direction that I would go in this week. Not Jonnu Smith, not Noah Fant. It would be Hunter Henry at $3,800 on the Patriots. Defenses right now, the highest projected owned are the Ravens, then the Bears, then the Chargers and Jets are the top 4 projected right now. I think if you can somehow find your way to Denver at only 5 or 6%, that is the way to go. Hell, you can even play with Bo Nix if you want to. If that's the way that you want to cheap out this week and pay up at all the other positions, I really like that a lot at $3,700. Just get Bryce Young in there, get him throwing, and shutouts on the board that way. But just even if he has to throw, he might come in and throw 3 picks in this game or get sacked a bunch. The Chiefs at 4% against the Raiders is pretty enticing as well, just because everyone is just congregating because it's a little bit cheaper around the Ravens and the Jets and the Chargers, who are all $100 to $200 less than those teams that I just pointed out. If you can find the extra money, you can go up, or you can go down and take the Packers or the Texans. Packers are going to be 2%. Texans probably 4 to 8%. They're a higher range, but the Texans at $3,100 are a really nice play. They're playing Anthony Richardson. They generate a ton of pressure, and it's likely that they are going to be leading in this game, hopefully, based on the spread at least, that they might actually get Anthony Richardson to drop back and pass 25 plus times. It would just be a bonanza for fantasy points for that defense. And then finally at receiver, actually, I guess we could talk about quarterbacks. There's no one quarterback that really jumps off the page in terms of who everyone is stacking up. That's what happens when you have 13 games on a slate. It's going to be a bit more laid out. Bo Nix does project as the highest owned at 14%, going up against a crappy defense. He's only $5,600. We built out the Bo Nix. He's the quarterback who appears in the optimal lineup this week, but he's the only one cracking double digits. After that, it's Tua, Love, Winston, Caleb Williams, Joe Burrow. There's a lot of guys to like this week. I actually kind of like Aaron Rodgers. But now with Lazard out, you get to fade Breece Hall, who's going to be 1/3 owned. Pray he doesn't do too much damage, or if he scores, it's a passing touchdown. And he only gets like 16 fantasy points. But Jets put up a ton, let's say. You can run Hunter Henry as the run back or Demario Douglas from the New England side of the ball, and you just go Wilson, Adams, and Rodgers, and just hope he puts up a game like he did the last time that he played the Patriots and really sticks it to them, throws like 3-4 touchdowns. They all go to those guys, and all of a sudden you've double leveraged the field, and no one is using Aaron Rodgers this week. It's probably not going to be good, but hey, I'm going to do it. He projects as 4% owned right now. Jalen Hurts is only 4% owned as well. He's very expensive at $7,500, but whenever you can get it's like Josh Allen. Anytime they're like sub 5%, I mean, Josh Allen's another one. Where does Josh Allen even come in? Josh Allen 2% owned. You're going to have, if you're making more than like 3 lineups, you got to make some Josh Allen lineups. He's 2% owned in a game where they're favored on the road, and maybe that other offense can keep up. And we've lost Curtis Samuel for this game. So it's like Cooper, you could use Kincaid, you could use Shakir, you could use Coleman. Hell, you could just use Josh Allen and see if he scores 40 fantasy points, because that's something that he does from time to time. And this is always the spot when you want to get on Josh Allen when no one else is using him. At receiver, the one-offs that are looking pretty high up right now, we got Tyreek. Lad McConkey is projecting out super highly at $5,100. I just don't see him getting anywhere near that, because I think that people are going to be worried off by the hip, because there's still a chance he doesn't play. It's in the late set of games. No one wants to wait around to late swap for that. So that projection is not going to be super accurate. We'll see what happens when it gets updated on Saturday evening. Waddle, McMillan is projecting to be the highest right now of the Tampa guys. I still like Palmer better. Cedric Tillman at $3,300. You saw him, excuse me, on the underdog slip, but he is $3,300. I mean, he's going to be pretty good on DraftKings. All these guys project anywhere between 14 and 26% for Tyreek. Tyreek's mispriced at $7,000. You should play Tyreek. He might go absolutely nuclear in this game. Trey Palmer at 35, around 13%. So a lot of people loading up on the Buccaneers cheap options. Everyone just seems to be using one of them, or even pairing them with Cade Otton, yet not using Baker Mayfield, by the way. That just doesn't seem like a thing that's going to happen in this game. But if you do need to save the money, I do like Cedric Tillman the best of those guys. After that, it's Trey Palmer, not including Cade Otton, who is objectively a better play than all of them at the onesie position of tight end, and you just don't forget about it and move on your way. But if you didn't want to go below $4,500 at wide receiver this week and try to figure out a way to make your team around that, it will be incredibly unique, because everyone is dropping down to save that money this week. Where's Troy Franklin? He's the last guy I actually wanted to look at. Troy Franklin at $4,100, only projects at 2% ownership. Everyone's playing Bo Nix. He's another cheap guy. Again, I said I like Lucas Krull, but if you want to go Nix, Franklin, and Krull, save all the money. So $4,100, $2,700, and $5,600 for a receiver, a tight end, and a quarterback, and just build an all-pro team around those guys, and hopefully Bo Nix scores like 20, Franklin scores a touchdown, Krull scores a touchdown. You're off to the races if the rest of your guys do what they're supposed to do. Okay? Code Mayo at Underdog to unlock that free pick. Deposit bonus of up to $1,000, and maybe you put some extra money in your pocket. We've done it 3 of the past 4 times in the newsletter, so sub to that. It'll come out on Saturday evening, along with all of the updated info, the rankings and injuries down in the description. Smash like, and if you sub to the channel, you get in that draw for $500 cash being given away on Tuesday evening on the Spread Pick Show with myself and Jeff and Tim. Tim and I will be live with Garion on Sunday evening at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Mayo Media Network after the late games before Sunday Night Football. So I will see you then.
Mayo experience! Experience!